Welcome everyone to World Changers Live. I am so excited. We're going to jump right in. I am your host, Shirelle Diamond Hogans, the Empress of Radical World Changers. Yay! And I am here with the infamous, incomparable, okay, Mrs. Merlin International 2023. Okay, Mrs. Laquisha Hall. Listen, I thought it. Mrs. Laquisha Hall, I am so excited to be here with my sister on today. Talking about this amazing topic, breaching the secrecy. Okay, so we're going to be talking about sexual assault, sexual abuse, and we're talking about breaching the secrecy because we're going to get into some things. I want you to govern yourselves accordingly. You may be triggered by some of the things that we say. You may have personally experienced this yourself or know someone that you love that has experienced it. And we are here always to provide hope and help. We both are not only survivors of sexual assault, but we are thrivers in life. So we are here to not just share our story, but we're going to talk about the journey to surviving it, because I believe that is a benchmark in life. We go through a lot of things and surviving is a lot and it's not to be taken lightly. But sometimes we park on the bench and stay there. And that's not the end of our life. There's another level after surviving. So if you're on the bench right now, by all means, get some hugs, get some love, rejuvenate, catch your breath, hydrate, because you have a marathon of life ahead of you. So there's another level. So don't park at the bench. So I'm going to start and I'm gonna allow my host, my guests to, to share. Go ahead, sis. I'm not even gonna go into your whole title again, but go ahead, sis. Let's talk about sexual assault and let's talk about the different stages of how it may happen when it comes to molestations with children, the different types of sexual assault. But we're both very focused on the teens and the children and protecting the children and providing information on that. So the floor is yours, sis.
Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me. I'm always so honored to be in your space. I absolutely love you.
I think you love my baby more than you love me, but I'm gonna
go
ahead.
No, it's a little bit equal.
That's all right. But I love you too.
I'm just I'm in awe of the example that you just gave. I was struck by that. That's very powerful to talk about how some people park on the bench and how maybe they get stuck there, and you're suggesting that what we're going to discuss tonight will help them get unstuck. But I just wanted to say quickly, I remember a time when I parked at the bench and I wanted to be buried there. Like I didn't have any plans of getting unstuck. And so I just want to speak to the person in that place too, that, you might feel like you'll never get off that bench, even with the awareness, the advocacy, the love and the hugs that you mentioned. But you can. People do it at different times and in different ways. We all heal at different rates in different ways. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because maybe someone will listen to this and say, yeah, that's nice that they overcame that way, but
I'm gonna be here. Like I had my mail, literally my address changed and I was on that bench. And I didn't realize I was on the bench because what I had survived was a lot. And so the bench, that survival bench, I crawled to, barely made it to. So that was my safe haven, not even knowing there was another level or there was somewhere else to go after this survival bench. I was okay with the bench for years. I was okay with the bench for years. And I totally get it. And thank you for sharing that with people. Take your time with yourself. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace to really deal with and unpack all that has happened to you, please, because there's multiple layers. And that's what we're going to talk about. That the actual act is one thing, but it affects multiple layers of you. and it resonates in you so deeply. So it does take time to unpack. And I'm not saying hit the bench, get some water, get tapped back in. You got 3 minutes, 3 cries. I'm not saying that at all. You know, you got 3 minutes to cry, then get back in the game. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is take some time for yourself. You know, you want to have to find your identity again. You're going to have to unpack all that stuff. And it's going to take some time. I just want you to know that there is life after this. There's another level of living after this, because I used to identify with, I'm a survivor of sexual assault. That's how I introduced myself. And I didn't realize I had made that my identity. Like that's who I was, just claiming who I was, you know, nothing else. That's what I was. I'm a survivor of sexual. So I would lead with that in certain circles. And I didn't realize how much I had let that be my identity. And I'm so much more than that. It happened to me, but it does not define me. And that's what one of the things I want to share tonight. It happened to you or happened to a loved one, but it doesn't have to define you. So that's what I wanted to get into. So thank you for sharing that and, you know, making sure you address that, sis. That's why we work well together. You know, I love it. I love it.
And then also, if you don't mind, I'd even like to share just even a little bit about that term, you know, survivor, that is often used. Even that is varying. You were talking about varying levels of different parts of this. And I think depending on where you are in your journey will support where you feel your identity is. So like some people don't even feel like a survivor, even though they've gone through it. They still feel like a victim. And to call them a survivor, they could be offended because they feel like they're still struggling, you know, and they're like, why would you call me that? I'm not surviving. I'm, you know, they don't see themselves as being successful in their journey. And so, you know, so many terms out there that are used: victim, survivor, thriver, conqueror, champion. Like there's so many terms out there now that people are using. And I think when you mention, we're going to talk about those stages, I think those stages involve those terms, right? So when you're going through it, literally, you're a victim because you didn't ask for that to happen to you. But at some point when you get past it, meaning when the abuse or the occurrence is no longer physically happening to you, while you might not feel strong, you did survive it if you're still alive. And so when we use that term, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you came out victorious and you've gone on with your life and you're successful, but just literally it means you got through it and you didn't die. Because when I tell you that is a huge victory, I can laugh now.
I would even say, sis, not so much in comparison, not so much just the physical act of you surviving that, but the real struggle is the mental part, the mental survival of it all. The physical act, it lasts for a certain period of time, and it is very traumatic. It is very invasive. It's very traumatic, and we understand at some points you wish that you do die. We get that. We also want to acknowledge that the mental and emotional residue of it all lasts much longer than the physical act. And
it lasts the rest of your life.
To be honest. Really does. And you can be triggered, you can relive it, you know, and it is so when we say surviving, and this is why we have these conversations, again, there's different levels of surviving. There's different levels of the trauma that there's different levels of the trauma that comes with this act. And so some people are not physically in it and they don't realize that they're still in it mentally, still being held captive by it mentally. And then they may take years, or some people never even get to surviving it mentally. You know, they may take years to even address it mentally because you have that blockage. you have that, you just want to forget it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't get the help that you need. You don't want to acknowledge it at all. And that can take years. So we want to be very cautious of the terms that we do use. But there are
I think
multiple
the
levels.
person has to identify that term, to be honest.
Yes, it's very personal. Yeah.
But you might, what I was referring to is you might hear that, like when you go to a shelter or a resource, they would refer to you as a survivor in the sense that you're getting help after the occurrence.
Right.
And so that's what I meant by the physical, you're a survivor. But yes, there's definitely levels of that mentally, which I think for one of the things that I teach people is that healing is a lifelong journey. So regardless of where they see me or someone else who they deem is strong, I am still healing. The people that they observe are still healing. It is not something that you ever can fully wash away, but you can navigate not feeling the dirtiness of it for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so that is the part where you can kind of transcend in your time and in your way into those other terms that you mentioned earlier, like thriver and conqueror and champion, all those words that people are using. But I always tell people, don't throw survivor out, because I feel like that's one of the hardest levels and one of the levels we stay at the most or the longest.
Yeah.
Because of what you said, as far as the amount of time it takes to get through not just the physical, but the mental part and all of that. I mean, I experienced child molestation starting at age 14. I left home at 16. So the abuse lasted 2 years. But when I physically got out of the space, I think my experience progressively got worse after that. Like I thought that I was in a better space because I left home. Right. But because of how I replayed what happened to me in my head and how insignificant I felt, it was more of a detriment after, I believe, to me to be in that space, because I didn't have any help. I wasn't reaching out. I had not told my story. I was trying to protect people I loved, which happens a lot. And I think that's what led to my suicide attempt. So one of the things you said earlier, there's a lot of levels of it. It's not just a lot of levels, but it's a lot of causes within this cause. So like you can't even sometimes just advocate for sexual abuse because there might have been some domestic violence in the background. There might have been mental health issues. There might have been suicide attempts. There might have been depression. So this issue or cause
very complex
involves a lot of parts.
Yeah.
And when you're one individual trying to navigate all those parts, it can take your mind,
Yes. Especially at the young age that you experience it. And for this purpose of this interview, we want to focus on child sexual assault to provide insight, education, and resources for, I always say caregivers, whether you're a parent, grandparent, community advocate, whether you're at after school program. Things happen in plain sight. They happen in public places in plain sight. For some reason, there's a thrill of getting away with something like that in public that the predators get off on it, for lack of terms. Right now, I have my brain is it's getting stuck. But things happen in plain sight.
And in families, because a lot of people they sometimes don't think that person that the child came to them about could ever, right?
Right.
And that's a part of my story too, of surviving child sexual abuse, is that I was abused by a man who was a pastor. And so he already had an outstanding reputation in the community and my family. He was seen as like a knowledgeable source of wisdom and all of that. But behind closed doors, he was doing something wrong. And I really appreciate you bringing up that we need to speak to even the parents in this, because, my mother and I have been able to reconcile our relationship. I'm now 42, but it was so difficult for me to go to her about anything at one time in my life, especially as a teenager. And so I definitely was not going to go to her about something this severe and serious, right?
Right.
So I struggled with, and I'm saying this because I think some parents who don't foster that relationship where a child can just freely come and talk to them about anything don't realize how much harm that can cause in a very serious situation.
Yes.
And so I had already had experiences where, you know, I was being bullied in school and all these different things. And I would try to talk to my mother about it, and she would throw me a scripture and tell me to go sit down, or, you know, something like that. So I already had in my mind, my mother's not the person to talk to about anything, right? So when this came up and that person was attached to her, there was no way. I thought that I was going to take that story to my grave, or that if it ever came out, if he ever got caught, and this is me thinking as a teenager, because remember, we talking about children here. I said, if he ever gets caught, he has to tell the truth because he's a pastor. Like, in my head, all people who got in front of a church to preach, they had a responsibility to God to do the right thing. And so I just, sometimes
the same people that did the offense.
Yes. I mean, I'd seen him in action. I had been to his church. He baptized my sisters and I. You know, just so many things. So I was like, okay, if this comes out, he's gonna finally confess. Like, I could see the whole thing playing out in my head, Shirelle.
Yeah. And as children, that's what we did, because we're very you know, we play it out in our heads. We get into the fairy tale of it all. Like, we play it out with our lack of knowledge, in a sense, our lack of resources, and our brains are not fully functioned. So it's like, as you said, your thought process of a pastor is, you know, he's going to love God. He has to tell the truth. God's going to get him if he doesn't. You know, you would never think that, you know, but you would never think that would happen. And that goes to one of our points of people in power and positions of power are more have access to do I'm trying to get the word out. They have access to do the assault. I want to say they have access to do not so nice things. The word's going to come to me as I keep talking, but we want to talk about how, like, anybody, male, female, any profession, any family member. And we're going to talk some real talk for you guys tonight, because as we said, we're both survivors of this abuse, and we want to tell you how it played out. And as Laquisha was telling her story, it was the same. It mimicked mine. Like, I couldn't tell my mother. Like, I didn't think she would believe me. We did not have that mother-daughter relationship. And I couldn't imagine. I felt as though, and I told my mom this years later, that I didn't feel as though she loved me. I didn't feel as though sometimes she even liked me. Like, I'm just here. And I felt like a servant as the oldest of her oldest of 4 children. You know, you had to cook, you had to clean, you had to babysit, you had to do this, you had to do that. And we never had like a bonding. I cannot remember a bonding moment with my mother at all. And like a hug or a sit down, we're watching TV together. I cannot remember a moment. So when something this harsh or, you know, very dark happened, she was not on my safe list to go to. So we want to talk about the people, like we say, it's open, anybody can commit this act of abuse. And usually it's someone who is in a position of power that has access and has gained the trust of the adults, and especially of the child. There, we call it a grooming stage, where and you can jump at any time, Laquisha, where, you know, they seek out a certain child, they see the lack of relationship with the adults, or they see the need of the child, and they play to the child's insecurities, vulnerabilities, and they become their confidant. and nothing happens straight on from the first encounter. They build that level of trust, and then they start to manipulate conversations and touches. They just try to test to see where the comfort level of the child and how far they can push the envelope. So you
Yep.
want to have conversations. And I did this with my nephew, and I teach in that we both teach in the community. So I teach that no, you have to have the uncomfortable but necessary conversations. Don't assume that your child can come talk to you. Young adults, don't assume that parents know everything. If you're watching this, have a straightforward conversation. And I tell parents and caregivers, have that conversation where you say, I want you to know that you can come to me for anything, and then list the things that they can come to you for, because you can say anything, but what does anything really mean? But if you start listing some stuff, and then maybe they'll say, well, what about this? Or what about this? That way it leaves no subject unturned. In today's society with the internet, social media, access to so many things. I have 4th and 5th graders with iPhones. I'm an Android girl because I got bills, but 4th and 5th graders have iPhones, and they are, they have access to the internet. So they have access to what adults have access to, but their brains are not fully developed, and they don't have life experiences to really grasp the things that they see, right? So you want to make sure you have those hard conversations. And I told my nephew, when I was raising my nephew, and I told him that anybody, whether it's your uncles, whether it's, and I named, male, female, I said, whether it's pastor, and he looked at me like, and the other people in church looked at me, and I said it in front of them. Yes. Because I don't want you to think, because I'm laughing with this person and I pay so much homage to this person, that I hold them in high esteem to a point where you would think that I would trust them more than I trust you. It may ruffle some people's feathers, but let their feathers be ruffled, and then question, why are your feathers ruffled? If we're trying to create a safe community. And then also, and then I'm gonna let you talk, Lucretia, but also your child may not be comfortable coming to you, and you have to be okay with that. But also sit down and help them create a safety plan, a tribe of who they feel as though they can talk to. And I tell people, whether it's in the family, whether it's in the neighborhood, the church, the community center, whether they go to the after school program, whether they have a favorite teacher, help them identify some allies that can support them, because you may not be available. You and them you may be in a different space with them, or they may think that whoever they need to talk to you about may cause friction with you and that person. The goal is to have them get it out of them and tell an adult, and not keep it with them and make decisions as a young child without all of the resources and knowledge of an adult. So help create that tribe and let them know that you can talk to me, you can talk to this person. And if this person starts switching up on you, then talk to this other person, because it may be that it's so, you have to have the hard and uncomfortable but necessary conversations, because the flip side of that is for something to happen under your roof with someone you entrusted your children with, and you hear about it afterwards. The effects that will happen, you will have as the parent, but oh my God, to know that your child went through that and didn't feel safe in their own home, or didn't feel safe enough to tell you as their parents. You don't want a child to have to go through that. And so when we talk about grooming, it usually is someone that is very close to the family or the child in some format, a sports coach. And it doesn't even have to be an adult. It can be the siblings. It can be the cousins. It can be any and everybody, because you don't know what other children are exposed to. And they play, house, they play catch a girl, get a girl. It's not like it was before. When I was growing up, and I'm 46, sis, when I was growing up, the most you did was kiss and rub or something like that, catch a girl, get a girl. You know, you wasn't going that far. A lot of people were. Some people did. But
Yeah.
these days, honey, it's wild out there. It's wild out there. So you don't know what other children are exposed to. So when cousins come over, sleepovers, anything, you got to know who's in that person's house. They go spend a night over a friend's house. You don't know if it's an uncle, cousin, and that's I was about to say that's how I got, you know, but I forgot you were recording. We're just not having a conversation here. I was like, you know, be a little professional. But you know, you never know. You want to monitor and go visit that person's house, and you want to make sure, and then make sure you really equip your child to say that you feel uncomfortable at any given time. If anything weird, somebody accidentally walks in on you in the bathroom, or you're getting dressed, or somebody accidentally comes into the room and they came into the wrong room with no clothes on or a towel on, like call me immediately, you know, for anything, no questions asked, and I will come get you. But you have to establish these rules, and not so much to scare the child, but you want to prepare them for anything. You have to prepare your children for anything these days, because lack of knowledge is what leaves them as bait, in a sense, right? It really leaves them helpless and as bait, and predators can tell when they're not prepared. Predators can tell when, you know, they haven't been educated, or they don't have anybody to go to, or they're needy and vulnerable, or have their insecurities, and, you know, they're not being confident, and, you know, they're allowing certain behaviors to happen. I talk a lot, sis, go ahead, but I'm just so we can't get everything.
Well, you're all right. All of it is correct. So absolutely, I agree. There's nothing you said I don't agree with. I don't know what to add to it right now. But I can say I experienced a lot of what you described.
Yeah,
absolutely, especially with the grooming.
Yeah, and the pain of, and I was just reading, because our book Breached, and we talk about breaching the secrecy. The synopsis is they breach the contract of trust. They breach the contract of love. They breach the contract of respect. They breach the contract of protection. And years later, we're taking our lives back, and we're breaching the contract of secrecy. A lot of times, the predators, the abusers, they harm you, and then they put you to secrecy, and they may even threaten a family member, you know, or threaten somebody you love, and try to make you keep it a secret. And a lot of let your children know, young adults, if you're watching, don't keep secrets. If someone tells you to keep a secret, that's not a healthy relationship, and you need to tell it loudly. You know, you need to tell it to as many people who will listen. And if they don't tell anybody else, then you need to tell somebody else. If anything, call 911 and tell 911 what it is. But try to get to your parents as soon as possible, your immediate supervisor, whether it's you're at the after school program, whether you're at church, whether you are at the neighborhood, or anywhere, any adult, tell them, and then call 911 and tell them, and let adults handle it. But don't keep a secret. Secrets are not safe. And I was reading, we're back in print now. These books are back in print, going to be out for the month, launching again in April. And I was reading through the stories, and I was reading my story, and it just brought back so many memories, of how I just did not know what to do. I was literally stuck, and I felt like, because it happened multiple times for me, I'm not crying. I literally trying not to get hair in my eyes. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm upset or crying, but because it happened multiple times to me, with multiple people in my family, I felt I took on the blame. I said, it must be me. It must have been something I did. I wasn't a fresh young girl, so I was like, well, was I acting fresh? I already had my own insecurities about myself, my body, my complexion, and everything. And then when this happened multiple times with multiple people, I'm like, it can't be them. They don't even know, or they really didn't know each other. It was different sides of the family. And so it must be me because I'm the common denominator. And we get so much in our head, and with our undeveloped brain and our insecurities, and we start blaming ourselves. And some, as Laquisha she spoke about earlier, it can lead to self-harm. It can lead to suicide. It can lead to acting out. The behaviors you need to watch out for is a sudden change in behavior, whether they regress and stay by themselves, isolate, they start acting out, change of grades, quitting sports, not being interested in things or going places they were used to go and wanted to go so much before. And I can imagine for you, that was church. Like, nope, I'm out. I don't want to go to church no more. I'm good. Me and Jesus good over here. We good. But
actually, no, I didn't blame God. It was.
No, I wasn't saying blaming God, but just not wanting to go to that location where that person was.
Oh, right.
So that's what I
That
was saying.
specific church, yes.
Yeah. I was like, me and Jesus good over here. We don't need to, I don't need to go to that church. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. All of those things are things that everyone in our community needs to be aware of, not just the parents. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just don't keep the secret. Make sure you talk to an adult. Identify who your allies are. And it's because you want it not. So I understand you may have friends that you trust, but they are limited on resources. They are limited on getting you the help that you need to help keep you safe. And parents, I need you to reach out. Caregivers, I need you to reach out and see what your local resources are. And investigate. Just don't sign your children up for any programs. Some churches in particular, and I'm an ordained minister, so people say sometimes when I talk, I'm I'm talking against the church and pastors. I'm like, whatever. That's not true. I just know, I just know the game of some people. I've seen the inconsistency and professionalism and spirituality with people who are people. Spiritual people are still people who have flaws.
Yes.
And so just because, monitor the youth groups. Don't just put your child in the youth programs and trust that, they church folks, they good. A lot of churches do not do background checks, and people volunteer in church. Pedophiles, people who may be on the sexual registry, because churches do not always do background checks. Come as you are, you can join. Oh, we need you in ministry to work. Oh, you love kids, come on, work with the kids. And nobody's done a background check, and they may not do work with the children, because some people do background checks, but they still work in the ministry and have access to the children, whether it's bathroom, playing, instruments, or helping out, volunteering. So they're not directly a part, but do due diligence and monitor where you put your children at. Don't assume that they are doing their due diligence. Because if something happens, they don't have something in place, you can't assume no. I always say no for sure. No for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
You have anything you want to say, Quisha?
Oh, I don't know.
You're funny. Really... I'm trying not to talk a lot.
You really did sum it up, though.
Subject for both of us. As we are constantly, as she said, we're all still healing ourselves. And I know one of the passions of why I do what I do is because I would never want someone to go through any of what I went through, not even a portion. Like I said, I've been through this multiple times. I actually think I wrote 3 stories in this one book. It's a compilation book, so there are other people who've written in this book, but I shared 3 stories, 3 of my stories, not all of them, but So here's the last part I want to talk about, LaQuisha, and you can start with this one. Let's talk about re-victimization. If you know someone who has been through this, and or someone comes to you and says that they have been through, they were assaulted, or and they may not tell you who it was, but I want to talk about re-victimizing. So we can talk about that.
So I didn't have a re-victimization experience, but
Okay.
I do find that in the people that I've talked to, they feel if they ever are not believed, or if there's any display of any kind of doubt from the person that they reached out to, it can discourage them from wanting to proceed with telling all the details, telling the story, going to the authorities, getting the help they need. Like, our reaction to someone coming to us about something that heavy is so paramount to how they start their healing process.
Right. Or if
We
they ever
can
do.
support them in starting it, or we can delay them. And it doesn't mean that they won't heal, but we could cause a delay because they feel maybe I shouldn't have said anything if, our reaction is negative, defensive of the perpetrator, or if we start, bringing up all the things the child did, and why would I believe you? You're not even passing your classes in school. You've been in these streets. Now you want me to believe, like all that stuff can really cause the healing process to be prolonged in that person. And so I have had some conversations with people where they feel that it's unfair to just believe a survivor when they come to us, right? Because there have been false reports made over time, and they get found out publicly. A lot of times we hear that more so with like celebrities and public figures, but I have seen those statistics, and they are nowhere near the numbers of people who are victimized that need help.
Right.
And so even if you don't, one of the things I tell people is, even if you don't believe the child, allow them to fully express themselves at least, like, don't cut them off. Don't start accusing them of things or bringing up their past or their poor habits or whatever. And ask them, what do you want to do? Like, they might have just wanted to say to you, this is happening. And they might not want to go to the authorities. They might not want to confront the person. And so you empower them further when you get their thoughts and opinion on how they want to proceed with their trauma and story, and move forward. I think and this is why the education is so important, we get so passionate about saving our baby, or I can't believe that happened to my child. I'm about to go kill this person, or the opposite. Girl, go sit down, because you always talking about somebody doing something to you. You acting up in school, and teacher called me yesterday, so I just think we have to be educated so we can control our emotions when these kind of subjects and topics come up to us, because we really don't know it. I liken it to death. We don't know when it's going to happen, or if. Just like death can be suddenly and unexpected, so can someone coming to you with a story like this. And it could 100% be true. And if you turn a deaf ear or your back on that person, it could prolong their trauma.
Definitely. One of the things I wanted to touch on is you saying that, like, basically don't push your agenda or your experience with that person that they tell you that assaulted them on them. We understand that you have your own personal experience with them that may not be mimicked by what the person who was just assaulted came and told you. Empowering them to acknowledge what they are feeling and what they have experienced. Listening to them. Listening is the key factor. Listening without prejudice, but also, as you said, what do you want to do? Because in the situation like sexual assault. Your rights, you're violated, your rights are taken away, your power is taken away in that moment. You don't have a voice in that moment. So to give them back some of that power, what do you want to do in this moment? You know, because you, again, you don't know where they are in the moment. But if they trust you to tell you, honor that space, honor that relationship, honor that, and listen. But definitely don't, you know, push on, well, I've never seen that, I've never experienced that with them, and they're not like that with them or my kids or something like that, because again, this is their personal experience that they had. And a lot of times people say what happens in this house stays in this house. They keep it in the family. The uncles may deal with it, or he'll get that person. I want to say he, because again, abusers can be male or female. That person will be dealt with or get dealt with, but don't tell our business outside of this home. That's part of re-victimization also, by making them keep that secret. And then, oh my gosh, my story is still having to break bread with those people in my own home, or be around them at family gatherings, being made to go, you know, like my voice, what I said didn't matter. And at the time I did not, when at first I did not say anything. So that was in a sense on me, because I didn't tell anybody. But when I did say something, I was told that I was lying. And I was still made to go. And I said, I'm going. So I left home too. I was like, I'm not dealing with this. I left home too at an early age, 16, 17. I left home because I just could not deal with it anymore. After the molestations happened, multiple molestations, and even assault, I was brutally raped by someone who I thought was my uncle. And come to find out years later, as I'm talking to a cousin on my dad's side of the family, this person is not blood related to me. My paternal grandmother had a boyfriend that she moved him and his son in to the home, and his son molested my aunts and had a son who I thought was my uncle, thought was my dad's brother. And yeah, so everybody knew, but nobody said anything. And it's when you know, like, let's stop it here. Because you staying silent or keeping it within the family, and or the adults know, you're but still giving that person access. They still have access to people who don't know, and they take advantage of that. And I had promised myself that I would not keep the family secret anymore. So when I saw someone who had mishandled me, playing with one of my younger cousins, I even though I was in turmoil myself, I could not keep that secret to myself anymore, because now my younger cousin was at risk of repeating my trauma. And so I told her mother, and her mother did the whole, or she's never out of my sight, blah, 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 this is the net. And I felt like, what? I'm telling you this secret. I'm telling you what I know for sure. I'm telling you, protect your daughter, get your daughter away from this person. And she still had him around her after that. So all you can do is breach the secret, give the people information. You can't make them do anything with it. However, again, knowledge is power. Knowledge is a weapon. Knowledge is protection. What people choose to do with it is on them, but definitely have these uncomfortable but necessary conversations. I wasn't healed myself at the time, but there was no way I can let someone else possibly go through what I went through with someone who I knew for sure was capable of what I was saying. And again, years later, we find out that people knew, but that's family. What happens? Where does that leave us when we're all related? We all love each other, But when you choose, when you choose the predator over the victim and who was the person who was abused, they internalize it as they're not worthy of being protected. They don't feel value. They don't feel love. They don't feel like they don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to depression, violent behavior to others, or even suicide. And that the suicide and depression and suicide is highly linked to sexual assault, because you want the pain to end. You want the thoughts to stop. You don't want your life to end per se. You want the reliving of it all, and the voices in your head, and the memories that haunt you in the day and at night to stop.
Right.
Just stop, So you can talk about that part, and then we can close up, because I don't want to hold you long.
Well, you said it. Honestly, I don't want to repeat it all, but that's what I experienced in my own story. By the time I got to college, which was several years removed from when I left home at 16, I couldn't take the thoughts anymore. And I felt all those feelings you described. I felt like no one cared about, me, how I felt that I had come forward finally with the story. I didn't tell that part, but I told at 18, and that was a whole situation. But by the time I got to college, because nothing was done when I told the story the first time, I was just like, what's the point? I don't have any family here. I was basically in college just trying to make it on my own. I stayed on the campus over the summer when everybody else packed up and their families came to pick them up. I stayed there because that was where I felt safe.
Yeah.
And I was the only person living in a dorm in an HBCU over the summer. Being picked up by the same cab driver every day who had sympathy on this little country girl. It didn't always charge me. God sent people who helped me navigate those tough times. But in that specific situation where I wanted to give up, I swallowed over 100 pills. And this was after I wrote letters to everybody in my family, re-explaining myself. And when I was taken to the hospital from the dorm, I was so disappointed because I vaguely remember all the ladies in the dorm, all the other young ladies who lived there, standing at the door watching me go down the hall and on this, the little hospital bed thing. And I thought to myself, where were all these people when I needed help? Like, y'all, you were watching me now in my low moment, but where were all these people when I needed to talk? I needed somebody to believe me. And it wasn't the fault of the people in the dorm. That I'm sharing this to say where my head was. So like,
right.
I just felt like the whole world had turned their back on me. So those thoughts are real. They're serious. I believe God kept me here for a reason. And then I was able to encounter and meet up with you. And so now we out here teaching a lot of what you share together, because it's important for people to hear the firsthand accounts and not just some of the stuff that they share through like organizational things. Like sometimes it could be presented very generically. Yeah. But when you're looking at someone who says that they have overcome that and you didn't expect them to, or they have very specific details to share that maybe tug at your heartstrings, I think that's what's impactful in this work.
Yes, definitely. One of the things we want to definitely let you know is that you are not alone, and you may never get an apology for the abuse that you have suffered. It was not warranted. It is not your fault. It's unfortunate that it happened to you. You may never get an apology for or an explanation why. But we can tell you that you are not by yourself. That even though the road may be hard and it may get very intense at times, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is help available. 24/7. If you ever need someone to talk to, you can dial 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline. And you can text 988 if you do not feel like talking. If you're on campus, seek out they should have a sexual assault support group there. I was a Sarah, which was someone who answered the phone. If someone called and said that they were either they were recently raped and they needed help, or I was also the person that would meet them at the hospital and be with them there during the process. So there is help. You are never alone. If you can't talk to your family, if you are out of state, be mindful when you're in college, because it does have a high rate for college students, male and female. So this is not just for women, but male and female. But there is help available, whether it's on campus, off campus. You have brain fart. Delaware County. Oh my gosh. You have a coalition in each state that you can talk to. So there are resources out there. There are different community groups that provide information. There's a national hotline number, as we said, if you feel as though you're maybe, and a lot of times your family may be known, or you may be known. Miss Laquisha is a international beauty pageant queen, so God forbid you be in the public eye and something like this happens to you. Who could you possibly tell? You don't have to do it locally. You can do it nationally, but please, there is help out there. And we want to let you know that, you are loved. You did not deserve this. No one deserves this. There is assistance for males and females for this, because again, this has no gender, age, race, but we want you to know that you are loved and you are not alone. If you are a child, or you're going through this, please reach out. If you are a family member, if you are an advocate, if you are a caregiver, please have these conversations. If you know someone of any age that is in your circle that you suspect may not be being treated well in their family, like you suspect that something is going on, please contact one of your allies, an adult that you can trust and that will listen and will get you help, not just say okay, but they will follow through. The school nurse is a good one. Go to the school nurse. They are mandated reporters. And so if you have anything that you need to discuss, they will go through the proper channels to be able to get you help. You do not have to fight this by yourself. Even if the person is in your family and you absolutely love them, it can get as difficult as it being a parent. Things like this definitely happen. It definitely happens from the people that you love the most. So if you cannot go to someone in your home because your home is not safe, please identify a safe adult outside of your home that will help. They will listen and they will help. That's the most important part. They will listen, but they will help. And again, the national number is 988. We do have any caregivers or anybody who wants any books with resources or just any kind of help. I have breached, and Miss Laquisha has her book, Holy Communion. Where's your book?
Unholy Communion.
Unholy Communion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's blurry. No, there you go, right there. Yep, Unholy Communion.
This is not a resource book as much as it is more of a documented account of my experience. Okay. But there is a book coming out actually this month, April 2023, called Stop the Silence, where myself and survivors from all over the globe not only briefly tell their story, but also told a specific strategy for overcoming or conquering what you're facing. So there is a book about how to heal, which I love, because there's so many books out there that just tell the stories, but we were intentional about giving the strategy and how to overcome, or how we overcame. Yeah.
Definitely. So we appreciate you for that one. And so her information is, what's your website, sis, so they can go to it?
I am hosting a campaign. I host a campaign in April every year called Reveal Your Teal. It's a hashtag. So if you follow that online, you'll find me, as well as at Confident Canvas on all social media platforms. Essentially, we use the color teal to create art, to encourage onlookers, hopefully survivors who are looking and seeking some help on the internet. And social media is a safe space because no one suspects that you'll get help through social media. As you might be aware, when you go to websites, they give you like a safe exit, but social media,
Right.
people just think you're scrolling. So
Right.
while scrolling, we provide hope through art.
Appreciate you. I appreciate you all for joining us on Sunday. Please visit, Google search the hashtag reveal your teal,
Yes,
TEAL, reveal your teal. And you can always confidentcanvas.com,
yes,
confidencecanvas.com for Miss Laquisha Hall. And you can find me at ShirelleDiamondHogans.com. I am on all social media also. Please, 988, if you need any help, look for your local coalitions or community resources. Talk to someone. We want to let you know that you are not alone. There is life after this. There is help during this. There is help during this. So you are not alone. There are people who can assist you. But parents and caregivers, please have the uncomfortable but necessary conversations to be able to keep your loved ones safe and provide that platform where they can come to you for anything, for
yeah.
anything, for anything. It'll mean a world of difference to them if they are ever in trouble or ever need your assistance. We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to continue to watch for other resources that'll help you create the environment that you can thrive in. Appreciate you all.